What's up, everyone? Welcome to the latest episode of the HashKey Learn series, where we speak to experts and professionals in the crypto industry to understand the most important and pressing subjects in the world of digital assets. Now, today I'm joined by my colleague Yanfeng Chen, who is head of the R&D Center at HashKey Group. Now, hello Yanfeng, how are you?
Hello, Jason.
Hi. Well, thank you for joining us. Well, today we are going to talk about a subject that, has been gaining lots of traction recently, which is decentralized identifiers, DID or DID for simplicity's sake. Now, on this series, we've been talking a lot about Web3, right? Giving back control and ownership back to the users instead of handing them over to centralized parties or centralized databases. And decentralized identifiers is poised to play a very big role in creating a decentralized web. And to be honest, I don't think decentralized identifiers just stops at the web. I think it expands to the decentralized society, right? Giving back control to us in terms of basically our daily uses and applications, etc. Now, I think we can start, Yanfeng, by maybe, can you give us a context, right, to fully understand the concept of decentralized identifiers, right? Let's first identify what is an identifier, right? When you look at Facebook and Google, they also use identifiers, right? So can you tell us how do the existing identifiers work, and what are some of the shortcomings or just cons, downsides that are associated with these?
In technical perspective, your credential is just an index of database. So this identification system needs to know what you have proprietarily. The most adopted method is to register your mobile number or email to get OTP PIN code. Nowadays, so much personal information is bound to mobile number, almost your identity of the real world.
Yep.
Not to mention some high regulated platform such as financial service that need complete high standards KYC process, verifying your passport, proof of address, proof of a human, bank account statement, etc. So large privacy breaches never stop. And another pain point is that you have to register your ID again and again on different platforms. Even though now SSO, so single sign-on authentication scheme, is widely integrated by many services, but top giant platform resist to integrate each other because maybe incentive incompatibility. So this is a situation of the Web 2 identification and some shortcomings.
In layman terms, can you explain to us what decentralized identifiers are and the main difference between decentralized identifiers and these centralized identifiers that you've just mentioned?
Yeah. From my understanding, DID or decentralized ID means your encrypted credential rests on large-scale distributed synchronized database, not only in the single data fortress totally controlled by the company. Thanks to recently research and development of cryptography and blockchain technology from open source community, a promising infrastructure and a governance framework to solve the problem, I think, in the near future. Using model cryptography public key system, your digital signature can prove and be verified without exposed secret you have. Your signed transaction and or activities can be broadcast and synchronized to hundreds of thousands of clients on the computer. In this paradigm, your ID is your public address and bound interactions to the system. What only you know and have is a private key that can be used for signing.
Is it fair, or is it the correct way to say that the true value of a DID is basically giving back ownership to the identity owner, right? So because DIDs, they are independent of centralized registries like authorities or identity providers. So in the end, we control our own data. We control our own personal information. Would you say that is the true value of DID?
Yeah, this is the ID or Web3 story. Or we have to gain the ownership of our data because data is more important in the future. Maybe the most important asset we can have in the future.
Does only one person can only have one DID, or each party or each individual can create as many DIDs as they wish?
DID is not limited to the individual. It can be an institution or some group. And I think, people can have multiple DID, but different DID may be interacted with different community. And some DID will be intersectional, involved in the different activities.
Now, from a more practical point of view, like what does a DID actually look like? Is it like a string of numbers, or is it kind of like a URL? Like what does it actually look like?
In this stage, DID has a different layer. For example, DID is basically is a protocol built on blockchain architecture based on transport layer of the current Internet OSI model. The prevalent use case is the access credential to the app with a decentralized app on blockchain, such as DeFi, decentralized finance application. The basic form of DID is just a wallet address to participate permissionless. And for DAO, new form of online organization, DID is a governance credential from wallet address with number of token lockup, a different layer, maybe from the network consensus and application layers. DID now doesn't have standards, but different application standard.
Now, you've just listed some use cases of how DIDs can be applied to the world of digital assets in DAOs and in NFTs. But many listeners of our shows, or many just investors of the crypto community, they are thinking, how can DIDs actually change, the way we live, right? How can these be applied to our daily lives? Can you perhaps give us like a use case or an example of how a DID, in an ideal scenario would work?
Yeah, I think decentralized web system, or buzzword Web3, is a revolutionary design of internet with different access credential to prove you are who you are.
Yeah.
So there isn't a centralized account system to manage your ID, so you have to take more responsibility by yourself. Database breach will always happen, inadvertently or even deliberately. So the scale of recent breach raised much more concern about the big data disasters. So it's a time for you to care about the DID, to be familiar with the user experience, to be acquainted with skill of operation, much like the first time you set up an email account.
Now let's talk about a very closely related subject, right? And this also comes at a time because the co-founder of Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin, I think in May, released a paper about the decentralized society. They introduced a concept called Soulbound Tokens. And the whole idea of Soulbound Tokens is about preserving privacy in a decentralized society. And I find this kind of pretty relevant to the idea of a decentralized identifier as well, right? So Yanfeng, can you perhaps give us a quick briefer of what Soulbound tokens actually are?
I think that the key primitive is accounts or wallets that hold public, visible, non-transferable tokens, but possibly revocable by the issuer. I read papers. The paper's co-authors refer to the account as souls, and the tokens held by the account as soulbound token. The co-authors of the paper also introduce a roadmap of programmable privacy for richer use case in the future. You can imagine a world where most participants have souls that store SPT, Soulbound tokens, corresponding to series of memberships, credentials, or affiliation. For example, a person might have a soul that stores SPTs representing education credential or your college degree, employment history, or just your essay writings or works of art, but we can use hash to seal it. In their simpler form, these SPTs can be self-certified, similar to how we share information about ourselves in our CV. But the true power of this mechanism is, I think, it's cross-attested. Maybe your SPTs can be issued by another soul and attested by another soul, who are counterparties to your relationship. So the counterparty souls could be individuals, companies, or institutions. For example, the Ethereum Foundation could be a soul that issue SPTs to souls who attended the developer conference.
And I think another key feature of Soulbound tokens is that they are non-transferable, right?
Yeah, because now in Web3 infrastructure, every asset can be transferred. So the crypto community places a very emphasis on the asset transferability. But many situations are such as some reputation system need your reputation or credit cannot be transferred, cannot be sold.
Now let's also talk about use cases of SPT, Soulbound tokens. What are some of the use cases or examples that Vitalik and his authors listed in his paper that you think are interesting?
For use case, I think the explicit example is souls are a natural way for artists to stake their reputation on their works. When issuing a tradable NFT, an artist could issue NFT from their soul. The more the more Soulbound tokens the artist's soul carries, the easier it would be buyer to identify the soul as belonging to the artist, and thereby also confirm the NFT's legitimacy. And another scenario is, I think the authenticity. Authenticity means, for example, recent days, many purported factual recordings such as photographs and the videos, because the deepfake technology is developing very fast. So direct inspection by both human and algorithm will increasingly hard. If we can include blockchain feature, enable us to trace the time maybe, or some geography information, a particular work was made. So Soulbound tokens would enable us to trace the social provenance, giving us rich social context, the soul that issued the work. SPTs can recontextualize such objects and empower souls to take advantage of the trust relationships already present with the community as a meaningful backstop to protect the reputations.
And I guess another use case that is pretty significant that the paper mentioned is that Soulbound tokens can also potentially change the way we borrow money, right? Like potentially we are able to use our credentials as a collateral for a loan instead of relying on our credit history, right?
Yeah. So as I said before, we can build the online credit and reputation system. This will be a big game changer, I think, because the traditional financial ecosystem supports many forms of under collateral or uncollateralized lending, but relies on centralized credit scores. So with SPT, Soulbound Tokens design or scheme, maybe we can set up or build a censorship-resistant bottom-up alternative to the top-down commercial or centralized social credit systems. If we can build this on-chain reputation system, maybe we can calculate publicly liabilities of everyone. So form the lending markets. So new correlation between Soulbound tokens and repayment risk would emerge. So bring better lending algorithm that predict and predict the credit worthiness, and thereby reduce the role of a centralized opaque credit scoring infrastructure.
I think regardless of how long it will take for decentralized identifiers to truly take off, I think all of us are really looking forward to how these DID can be integrated into the crypto community. This is a good time to end today's discussion. Well, first of all, Yanfeng, thank you so much for giving us a very detailed explanation and overview of how decentralized identifiers work, and as well as Soulbound tokens. So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.